Hello, I'm Rick Edwards. Welcome to this session, which is Tales from the Casting Couch, How to Find the British Peter Dinklage. I mean, you can read. I'm going to just talk about drama first, and then we'll broaden out to a more general discussion about on-screen talent, so including presenters and so on. I'm going to introduce the panel Scylla style, because I can. So what's your name and where do you come from? And by where do you come from, I mean, what do you do and who do you do it for? Ed.
I'm Ed Havard. I am Head of Special Programmes at Channel 4.
Steve.
I'm Steve November. I'm Director of Drama at ITV.
Andrew.
I'm Andrew Newman. I'm Chief Executive of Objective Productions.
Kurt.
I'm Kurt Yeager. I'm an actor in Hollywood and have my own production company called Artist Film.
Colleen.
I'm Kathleen Crawford and I'm a casting director freelance for whoever will have me.
Arthur.
Presenter for the London 2012 Paralympic Games and specialist factual history presenter.
So that is your panel. We're going to have a quick look now actually at a sizzle reel, I think is the industry term, a sizzle reel with some examples of excellent disability casting. So let's start by talking about the best thing that you or your channel or company have done involving disabled talent on screen. Steve.
Okay, the best thing. Well, there's quite a few. I'm kind of pleased to say this. I'm sure we're going to come to the point there's not enough, but there are some things which we're proud of, and I think maybe the best is Shirley Houston being a regular character in Coronation Street. I think that's something which we're pleased to, so that it's not in the kind of peripheries or the late night schedule or kind of the boundaries. Actually, it's absolutely mainstream. It's in Coronation Street. It's right at the heart of ITV programming, of kind of popular programming. So I think of kind of a few examples. That's probably the one that means most to me, because it's personally, I kind of think bringing it right into kind of mainstream is very important.
Andrew?
I'd say the thing that's probably most interesting is, I don't know whether it's a talent, it's having a contestant in the cube without making a massive deal about it, who only had one arm. Obviously, we had to choose the games that they would have with that in mind. But I think having that on ITV1 and sort of not making a big deal about it, not making it too easy for her, not making it, unfair, but treating her like you would anybody else, is probably, in terms of impact, quite a big thing. I think there's a time that maybe 10, 15 years ago, ITV might have gone, I don't know, might turn off the viewers, people might not know how to react to that, whereas they were like, that was really good, putting them as the first contestant, and there was a really good feedback from the channel and from viewers who commented on it.
Ed?
I was going to say the Paralympics, but I think actually it's the impact of the Paralympics. It's what happened afterwards. It's the fact that we ended up showcasing and foregrounding disability and disabled talent across all the genres on 4. And it became something that was embedded in our DNA. And it resulted in Arthur becoming a presenter in Factual, Addy doing current affairs, Mad Fat Diary winning awards for its treatment of mental health. I think that would probably be the thing we're most proud of.
And what about missed opportunities? Have any of you feel you've had missed opportunities or bad examples where you've maybe taken a risk that you think hasn't paid off? Don't all jump at once. Colleen, has there been any instance you can think of?
I think not necessarily, no, but I think a missed opportunity, which we'll work on, is actually just with all storylines, because we'll get a script and we'll be given a brief by a director and a producer, and we'll be asked to go out and fill the roles with actors. And I think one of the missed opportunities is actually when you have a specific role, like we did in Under the Skin, which Adam Pearson played the part of the lonely man in Under the Skin, and we had a specific mission to find someone who had a disfigurement, a facial disfigurement, And so we did that, and that was great, and we achieved that, and there was you know, kind of, there was no cheating, there was no casting anyone and then making it look different on screen. So, and Adam gave a brilliant performance and shared a lot of himself on that. But I think there are other opportunities when you've just got any character, and you should just be kind of seeking a wee bit more, because the briefs are terribly narrow. I mean, on all fronts. I mean, there's not enough women, there's, you know, so.
Whose responsibility is that? Because what we're effectively talking about is doing neutral casting.
Neutral casting,
where
exactly.
anyone can come in and you pick the best person and maybe they surprise you. So why isn't that happening?
I think the missed opportunity is building up relationships with kind of actors who have disabilities, just knowing their range, knowing their accent, just getting to know them basically the way that we do with any actor, because you build up long relationships with actors and cast them more and more often as you cast them in a small role, and then you get to know them, unless they're obviously on the lists, you know, they're sort of known and things like that, then you just make offers. So I think the big missed opportunity is actually just neutral casting. Because
there are no British disabled actors in leading roles in primetime series or films. Shouldn't we be seeing more disabled actors on TV?
Yes, and I think that there's a bit of a two-pronged attack. There could be the casting directors building up better relationships, and there could also be something that I think comes from more of a commissioning level, and then also you would want to start looking at writing, because already, and I mean, I don't know if you guys will agree with me, Steve, you might have an opinion on this, but already with casting leading roles is really difficult. The pool that we are essentially able to choose from is tiny. It's recognisable faces that the audience are excited to tune in and watch. So they're quite often people who have a long history of other roles, or are kind of quite hot at the moment, as it were. So the same names come up again and again and again. So even if the character, even if it's irrelevant, if the person does or does not have a disability, it's a very small pool anyway. So then I think it has to come from a writing level, commissioning level, and that's a slightly different thing. I've got a huge responsibility that I need to, you know, kind of work on in terms of neutral casting, but in leading level, that's a different kind of question.
Because it's a question of risk, isn't it, Steve?
I think it's very interesting. I think I sense just some old assumptions and kind of received wisdom and kind of a kind of unconscious kind of bias in a way that I can't think that we've ever really, apart from, you know, there are got to be some kind of sense in certain roles require certain things, but there are probably many, many roles where a brief goes out, where we talk to writers and producers, and then it comes to casting directors, and at no point has anybody said this role has to be able-bodied or can't be anything else, and yet we're all probably guilty of falling into that assumption in a way and thinking slightly too narrowly. And I think, you know, the same used to happen of probably women and age and ethnicity, and those are kind of things which are, you know, taking a little bit more of a lead, and that now with disability hopefully we'll catch up and think, well, actually, have we all kind of fallen into the trap of a kind of an assumption that's actually false, that there are many, many opportunities where we could be looking more broadly. I do agree, actually, that can come very much from a kind of commissioning production kind of level, in making that very clear, in actually saying we didn't have any reason not to, but let's make clear that we don't have any reason not to. So send us the broadest list possible. And what we're always looking at, and what excites us genuinely, is when we get a really broad list of actors to discuss with the producer and casting director, and there's somebody on there that we don't know, there's something very surprising. There's nothing worse actually than getting a list of the same rather standard kind of ITV rep faces. It's a kind of heart-sinking moment. So generally, you know, we're excited when there's something which surprises us. And maybe it's I know it sounds kind of probably it's too simple, it's not a kind of panacea in any way, but just making that very clear, saying surprise us. There are many opportunities, so let's take them. Let's all be more aware of what we're doing and how we're actually narrowing the field kind of unconsciously, really.
The other thing I think is this is not a missed opportunity, but building up disabled talent off screen has a huge impact, obviously, on the quantity and quality of disabled talent on screen. And we are doing a few things there, both in terms of our scripted and non-scripted stuff. And you'll see an emphasis from us in terms of our commitment to off-screen disabled talent during the Rio Paralympics, which is something we are very conscious that we need to have the same level of emphasis in terms of our off-screen as we do of our on-screen talent.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because you have to, you know, have talent that has experience just going into the audition room on a regular basis. If that person's not comfortable with that process, they can't compete on a similar level as another actor that goes out 4, 5, 6 times, you know, a month, or however often they do. If you go out twice a year, you're going to go in with the jitters every single time. So you have to have that ability to go into a casting office and do that and know how this works and everything else. But then it comes down from that commissioner level, then it comes from the writers and everything else. But what the goal is not to have more disabled actors on TV in disabled roles. It's to have disabled actors or actors with disabilities auditioning for able-bodied roles, that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? If you have a guy who's playing a character who's 45 years old, salty hair, quick wit, and he's a lawyer, it doesn't talk about the mode of transportation that he uses to come into the courtroom. So why aren't we seeing that in the audition room? There's no difference there. So once you get that process going and that person gets comfortable with that, then you're going to see their talent come out, because they've gotten past that nervous stage, which every actor goes through.
We actually reshot a very famous scene from a famous film with 3 incredibly talented actresses. Sam Renke, who's here, Genevieve Barr, and Grace Mandeville. So let's just take a look at it, see what you think. They all work, don't they? Colleen, they all work. They're brilliant, they're different, they're interesting.
Yep.
You could cast them.
Yep.
So why don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah, no, we need to build relationships. I had a conversation with Louise Dyson at Visible People the other day, and there are all sorts of agents. You know, there's across the range. Really, you should be with an agent because of the relationship that you have with them, and the kind of the way that they see your talent and want to you know, push you forwards in your career. But Louise does specialise in working with actors who have a disability, and presenters as well, I believe. It's actually, I just don't deal with presenters, that's why I don't know. And we had that exact conversation, which is that we just need to work better together. Because I spoke to some writer-directors who I know, to ask them where do they think that the problem comes from when there is a case of underrepresentation, I think, on screen. And they were saying to me, you know, a combination of commissioning level, you know, what they're being asked to write, and the kind of the scope that they have there. And I said to one of the directors, so if we were casting a GP who, you know, was a character who was a GP, and it didn't matter, as you say, what mode of transport they get to work in, and I brought you somebody who had one arm, or, you know, who had a sensory disability, how would you feel? And he said, it'd be great. If they're the best person for the job, then let's do it. So I think they would be very unfazed by it. So there is no good reason, actually.
Hilary, I just want to quickly talk to you. We would have had you up there, but literally there is not room. Yeah. Hilary Salmon works at the BBC. She's an executive in drama. Do you agree with what Colleen's saying? Do you think that it's just a question of suggesting actresses like this?
Partly. I don't think we can put all the responsibility on the casting director. I mean, I suppose what I find interesting is how slow the process has been over the years. 10 years ago, Alison Walsh produced this session, and I where is she? Ran a training scheme for disabled actors. So Channel 4, BBC, Actors Centre, and it feels like. And then this last year, we ran something called The Company at the BBC, where we took 6 disabled actors who we thought were, you know, very, very strong, would do well in auditions, would get cast, and we guaranteed them 2 parts each over a year. And I have to tell you, we had to extend the scheme by 6 months to fulfil that minimum obligation. And we made a film not unlike your film. It was very witty, showed off the talents of the actors. It was tongue-in-cheek, it wasn't taking itself too seriously. And everyone who saw the film loved it, said, yes, we must do this, yes, it's really important, we must do this, why don't we cast disabled actors? And then nothing came from that. So the actors were still not invited to auditions, and in the end it came to myself and Ewan Marshall, who had a long history of working with disabled actors and is disabled himself, going around the individual productions, talking to the casting directors, talking to the producers and directors, and saying, these are the actors, let's introduce, you say, let's get to know them, let's introduce you to them. What parts have you got in your up-and-coming show that would be right for them? And they had to really think about it and commit themselves. And it felt like really hard work.
But worth it, presumably. What is the resistance then? Is it just an ingrained prejudice?
I'm surprised in a way. I agree. I can't identify any resistance, and I don't kind of therefore disagree that it's not kind of happening. Obviously, there is a problem, and yet it's really hard to say where is the resistance. I genuinely think it's in a way just a lack of imagination that we kind of probably, a lot of people, and I include myself in that, it's not to say it's there or there's blame, tend to kind of, the first thing you do naturally is a kind of reading process, I think, is kind of cast yourself, whoever you are. You kind of imagine you've got to think beyond that and keep thinking beyond it, not be kind of come trapped by your own experience, by your own imagination, by your own assumption, really. So it's probably, I don't think there is any genuine obstacle. I think it's just a constant process of reminding yourself and other people that there are other possibilities, that we need to think more broadly about these. Across all the time, actually, there's probably a more interesting way of doing many things that we don't necessarily think of first.
Statistics have barely changed. That's
And
yet we've been having these conversations quite a long time. I mean, I wondered what you thought, Steve, of introducing a quota, for instance, which is something we have talked about.
The quota thing is really interesting.
Do you want to talk about that later?
No, we can do it now. But so Sky have just announced that they're going to have a 20% quota of black and ethnic minorities, I think in front and behind camera, which is great. And the BBC has said 15%, and they've also said 5% disabled by 2017. But if you look at the national stats, if you look at the demographics, 20% of the UK is disabled. Sky haven't even mentioned them, and our national broadcaster is saying they're going to aim for 5% on screen.
Which is 4 times what it is at the moment.
But that aim is still too low.
Of the population is disabled. What does that mean if you're dyslexic? Are you disabled? I mean, I don't know. It's quite a. All of this is quite unnuanced, really, because what we're talking about, really, it should be that you should see all sorts of actors for a role and be quite blind to it. But at the same time, there's one thing which is, been alluded to, that the bigger channels want recognisable stars. Now, at the moment, there aren't so many recognisable disabled stars, so they don't, people need to work their way up so that they can be the lead character. But what would be a very easy fix is to say, you have to see a wide range of people. And hopefully that would then change. I don't know if a quota is necessarily a great thing for anything, because it almost puts something into a special position where it's more significant. And it's surely the whole thing should be, if you've got one arm, you should be able to be a lead in EastEnders or Downton Abbey or whatever, rather than they're forced to have you and it's a special thing, disabled people over there, non-white people. It should be just a variety, and actually I think
But what Hillary is saying is that without a quota, nothing's changing. And us sitting around and saying, we'll see more people, but
our people see more people are... And then I think there's the other thing, is that some, we're talking about disability as if it's one thing, whereas it's lots of things. If you are in a wheelchair, you probably won't be playing a famous athlete who wasn't in a wheelchair, and some.
Why not?
Because it would cost too much in CGI. No, but I think that there's some things that some roles it wouldn't really matter. Some disabilities are not hugely going to count you out of loads of things. They're either not visible or they're not sort of something that would stop people believing you as a character. Some are. But it should be quite easy to say you should see lots of people, and then hopefully if the actors... I mean, the other thing is, what we're really saying is that then disabled actors can go to lots of castings and get turned down, just like every other actor. I mean, I think there's a lot of rejection in being an actor, isn't
I
there?
think that's where you put, if you did a quota, that's where you put the quota. You put it on the access to auditions, not on the results. You want people to go in that are going to be the best for the role, whether it's disabled or not, no matter what, across the board. So what you're looking for is the best talent. If they don't have access to be able to showcase that, then that number can never change. And then you have to develop, not develop the talent, they have to be able to see that there is an opportunity for that talent to be utilized. Like if you're, one problem that I have, I'm an amputee below knee on the left leg. No one will know, I have no gait issue, I can ride bicycles, I can do flips over jumps, I was on Sons of Anarchy riding motorcycles. It wasn't even barely talked about and I'm still a murdering son of a bitch, right? That's who I play. So it was barely talked about. But if I go into a television casting office who casts me in episode 3 of a show for an able-bodied role, and episode 6, an amputee comes up, they've just wasted the one guy that they know can knock it out of the park. So they save me. So there's, a little bit of an issue in that regard. So it's not that there's like resistance, it's just a natural stumbling block to the job. It's not like, oh, I don't want to see him. It's just like, if I use him now, I can't use him in 4 episodes. In film, it's not the same because it's packaged. It's one job, next job, next job, next job. And then if they have just a limited amount of time to do the job, which you're being, hired just like an actor, like you are an independent casting producer, and that's what you do. You go out and look for work and get work and cast and so on and so forth. And they only have a limited amount of time. So if they're not doing their job super efficient, then they're let go. So it can't fall all on them. No. And it can't fall on a commissioner or a CEO or whatever. But it's a little piece from each person saying, let's, as a group, here are the different stages. Here's the 7 of us, right? The 7 dwarves. And you get them together and you say, we're going to make this initiative change. And I'm going to see 3 PWD actors every single week, indefinitely, for 2 years. Just open the door and see what happens. You're not putting a quota on the results. You're not putting a quota on what gets on screen. You're putting a quota on the openness of accessibility.
And I don't think the other thing is that if there's a quota on screen, some people will not really want to do it. No, and I think if there's a quota, it'd be very hard. I would say if you
did that, you might end up with talent that's not good enough, and now you put the wrong foot forward, pun intended.
The other thing, the Paralympics was not achieved through quotas. The Paralympics, which is generally acknowledged to have changed attitudes to disability in this country, was not achieved through a quota-driven.
But you did have a quota, didn't you? You wanted half of the on-screen talent to be disabled.
We aspired to that sort of. It wasn't a quota. It was an aspiration for the mix of talent we wanted across the piece. And I suppose the more important point is the way in which neutral casting has become our norm across all our output is not because of quotas. It is because the result of the Paralympics meant that it's sort of become, from the top to the bottom of the organisation, something that's embedded in what we do.
I think to fill quotas, you need to. I'm thinking about the pool of talent that you've got accessible to you. I didn't know that there were opportunities for disabled presenters, actors with a disability. It was something that I came into with a background from nothing to do with media before. It was put out there, it was pushed out there purposely by Channel 4 to make people aware that this is what they wanted to fulfil for their goal for the 2012 Paralympic Games. And it's not something that we see happen very often. The only time I've ever seen it happen was with the Games. And I think if you want to do that in acting or presenting, you need to make it aware. You need to reach out to these grassroots people so that they come forward and then fulfill your quota. So you've got an abundance of talent to choose from in the auditions.
Yeah, because that pool of talent that Channel 4 did amazingly to find didn't happen by accident, did it? That happened through a lot of hard work and a lot of money and a lot of effort.
It didn't seem, the idea of quotas just seems like some sort of
but some groups get quotas and others don't.
I don't know there should be quotas for anything. I think that people should be encouraged, and it's to do with changing. I think the Paralympics was great because it wasn't worthy. The trail for the Paralympics was very different on Channel 4 to what it would be like on the BBC. The last leg was totally unlike a disabilities programme from the 80s. When Channel 4 started, they would have done a disabilities programme, and it would have been not fun, depressing, sort of like something from a quota, and it would have been awful. And I suspect disabled people and able-bodied people would be in agreement that the programme was not great. And I think that the Paralympics was good because it was it was just sort of a bit irreverent, and it was.
Real.
You know, it was real, and it was, I don't know, it didn't seem like a worthy, oh, we've got to do this. It seemed like everybody in it was enjoying it, and I'd say that The Last Leg is a great legacy to have from that, because now it's, one of the presenters has got short arms, one has got one leg, one hasn't, but it's not a race.
No.
Adam Hills is going to be one of the main presenters on Stand Up to Cancer, which is the biggest entertainment show that we will do this year on Channel 4. His disability will not be referenced once. No. It's not referenced in The Last Leg anymore.
I think as well, it is that the availability and the visibility of talent is absolutely key, and I think that's. There was an event, I'm sure. Alison and probably Hilary were involved last year, the BBC and BAFTA, of just introducing producers and commissioners to disabled talent, and it was almost like a kind of speed dating, auditioning, just meet a lot of people. And a lot of producers and execs at ITV went, and 2 people they met, not on screen yet, but will be cast, because they were just inspiring on the day. And I think when you see the talent, when producers go and see talent, think, wow, there's somebody good I'd love to work with. And that, I think if I'd said, oh, we're going to have a quota and I really want you to put somebody with a disability in this programme, they'd have grumbled and felt that they're having their arm twisted. But actually when they're introduced to great talent who they wanted to work with because it was inspiring, it's had a great effect. So I think bringing the talent through, making sure there's that access. I think a kind of quotas on the auditioning process is quite interesting. It's something that I don't think we've talked about in this country. Because anything, it does. It's. I think that's because quotas on screen. I do agree. It feels like a very blunt instrument, and it's a very well-intentioned, and it might achieve the result. But there's always the question: well, there's the quota, but have we actually got the mechanism in place to achieve the quota? What is that mechanism? How are we going to get there? And we've got to be very realistic
about being a bit more long-sighted about it, though, because a quota puts those people, whatever group they're from, on screen, and then the audience become more comfortable if the fear is that they're not comfortable. And then in 10 years' time, we're not talking about quotas because it's the norm. And you've made a significant change that will guarantee that you see results.
Right. Well, the quota on casting is just opening up for access. I mean, if you talk about it changing the idea of, oh, this is a moral thing we should do, it's ethical, yada, yada. If you say this is dollars and cents, I mean, it's show and then business, and business is a bigger word. So if you say in America, there's 57 million Americans that have some form of a disability with $174 billion in discretionary spending, who doesn't want to tap into that? There's a lot of money. You know what I mean? I mean, you see like the Guinness ad. You know, I mean, that was one of the biggest ads, and they had a bunch of guys in, you know, chairs playing basketball, and all the guys got up except the buddy, and they said, we're going to equalize. So that was a big campaign, and so on and so forth. You see a character in Glee, you see a character in Breaking Bad, you see a character in Sons of Anarchy. You start seeing these things, and it's just another access point. It's marketing. So if you open the access to be able to see what exists, if it doesn't, squash it. Say, we tried. But is it really opening the door to let that opportunity happen? Because like it's almost as simple as saying, will you let water flow? If you're stopping the process from happening at the gates, right, then it's never, ever going to be opened. It's always going to be dammed.
It really is. I think that kind of access.
Sorry, Steve.
No, sorry.
I was just going to say, we're not stopping anything.
Sure.
It's just as well as kind of like what you, and I don't mean that defensively, I mean, it's actually, funnily enough, I'm listening to you talking and I'm thinking, when was the last time that on that CV, on someone's CV, it was, I mean, it shouldn't be clear to me, obviously, because it should just be a CV. I've read a lot of CVs, but I'm not sure that I'm getting that many submissions. And we welcome submissions on things like casting networks when you do not have to have an agent. So it's not just Spotlight, if anyone's familiar with Spotlight, and a lot of the actors in the room will be. It's not just that we go through Spotlight, so we actually do open it up. There are ways and means of hearing about the jobs that we are auditioning for. Am I getting that many submissions from actors who have a disability? I don't think so.
I think part of that is then incumbent on, and that's maybe where kind of commissioners, producers, we do have to take a lead in making sure people know that there is opportunity and they are welcome and there is access. Because I think, and this again, I mean, we've talked about in all sorts of different forms, I think, from class, race, all sorts of things. Is TV a kind of equal opportunities open business to all sorts of people? I mean, you know, or is it a kind of white middle class hegemony that feels slightly closed? And many people assume that the business is not for them and therefore don't come forward. That won't be for me. They won't want me. I think we need to really say, yeah, of course it is. And that's where you can't. I do think that we've got to take a lead and say we can't say, well, that's the way it is. People aren't there. there for. I think, no, actually, why aren't they there? If there's a good reason, if it's they feel that they won't be welcome, then we absolutely need to say, of course you'll be welcome. We need to be proactive in making sure that those routes of access are very clear, very easy. And I'm sure then, I think, then we'll start to see the results, because good people will come. Not everyone who comes through will be good, and we have to be honest about that. Sure. But good people will come through if they know that they'll have a good reception.
Also, I think things are changing, and I think you see people with disabilities on entertainment shows, you see them presenting. I think it's just actually there isn't a huge identifiable acting star yet at the moment, and I suspect that will change. I don't know that. I think what you're saying about it being a blunt instrument, if you had a quota, I think it probably would be. I think the other thing is you've got to bring the producers on side and make them think, yeah, this is a good thing. It's not going to be something imposed on me. It's going to be something that might throw up a really good person rather than it's something forced.
It's a creative decision. I think you're actually enriching your product, your drama, whatever it is. You're enriching your show. As long as we're coming from that angle, then everyone will want to do it. Everyone on TV will want to make a better show.
And writers write what they know. So if they don't know this world, then they're not going to write it. Every writer knows that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, you do research and you learn everything else, but you do what you know. If there's no process there creatively, then it fails on that level. If it's failing from the upper level, does it? If it fails from the talent level. So it's failing in all these little ways, in all these little pieces, and it's not one person's responsibility to go, I'll fix it. Because even if that person presses as hard as they can, everyone else who's not involved in it goes, and then it falls in and that person loses hope and 2 years go by.
I want to have a bit of a more extensive chat about the presenting side of things and just have a look at a clip of a show that Arthur's doing at the moment called Flying Wild. Should say that is it's still in the edit, so you'll notice that wasn't Arthur's voice, for example. Just tell us a bit more, you touched on it, Arthur, but tell us a bit more about your journey to where you are, to presenting shows like that.
Yeah, sure. So I talked about the talent pool, and I mentioned that because it's relevant to me in terms of my background was as a Royal Marine. I did 5 years in the Royal Marines, had an accident, a car crash in 2007, which paralysed me. I got my pilot's licenses, which is hence why I'm doing these series now. I'm expanded out into specialist factory, but I also got involved with sport. And then I think it was early 2011, I became aware of a Channel 4 scheme. It was a talent search where they wanted 50% of their on-screen talent to have disabilities for the 2012 Paralympic Games. And I put forward for it through recommendation from friends. And I was the first application that Channel 4 received, and they put me on various different placements around the production companies. This was a world that I had absolutely no idea existed. Media was something else other people did, but the opportunities were there for me, and I pursued them because it seemed like a fantastic career. If I could have the opportunity to present my disabled counterparts and athletes and increase their profile, and that's something that I wanted to do. And Channel 4 helped me every single step of the way by putting me on placements at production companies, like I said, to build up my knowledge of presenting and the basics of it and how to do it. And then early 2012, signed the contract to present the games live, and it was a humongous risk. I think, it was the largest live gig they had in their 30-year history, and to come up with something so bold as to say we want half of our talent to have disabilities and have never done any presenting before was just phenomenal, really. But I think perhaps one of the conclusions that we'll take away from here is that it was because of that risk that they made such fantastic breakthroughs. You've got to take monumental risks in order to be able to achieve monumental things. And I think sometimes, 4 out of 5 times you'll fail, 9 times out of 10 you'll fail, but that one time when you get it right, you'll really get it right. And I think the reason I'm sat on the stage here because I guess we got it right, and I'm going on now to do other genres. I'm doing flying documentaries that see me go to Nepal, Australia, and it's something completely unrelated to disability or Paralympic sport. I'm still doing those things. I've had the opportunity now to throw myself into other genres and do military history documentaries and stuff like that. And I think that's what it's all about. It's taking the risks and identifying the talent, nurturing them, giving them every opportunity and chance that you possibly can for them to be able to take ownership of their own career, find their own drive, and make a success of it. And another point I'd like to raise as well is that it's not just down to the channels, the companies, the producers, the broadcasters to to do everything for disabled talent, you have to take ownership of your own career. It's an incredibly competitive industry out there, and it's down to the individual to do their part as well. But you can, and I've certainly found, thankfully, throughout my career, that all the doors have been open. And it's been from grassroots right to where I am now.
I think can I just add one thing? And this is, I know he's sitting right here, so I don't want to talk about him as if he's not here. But Arthur would not still be presenting for us if he wasn't a brilliant piece of talent. He's not, he's not presenting for us because he's disabled. He's presenting for us because he's brilliant. And in the end, he wouldn't have survived, got through Rio and have done Sochi for us and got through London, have done Sochi for us and other things. If he wasn't a superb broadcaster and nominated for Grierson and all the rest of it. And we've been touching on this, but I think the crucial point is that the access might have been through that, but the end result is really about the talent, and it has nothing to do with disability in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how can you...
The title of the session should be, how do you let the British Peter Dinklage find himself? I mean, it's sort of opening up the access in a way. We're not going to...
I'll speak to the organisers about that. I'll speak to the organisers.
No, but I think it's an interesting thing because it's a little, other areas, whether it's entertainment, presenters or whatever, people fight their way to get in, and they normally have a massive self-belief or both a big and a fragile ego. There's a sort of type of person that becomes a comedian, and they, before I ran Objective, I was head of entertainment and comedy at Channel 4, and the people who come through there who have gone on to be great stars, when you met, I don't know, Sacha Baron Cohen or Russell Brand or something, they have something about them, and it will be, I don't think it'll be a person with a disability who believes in themselves and wants it and runs their own career, like you say. It's a little bit, patronising for us to say, how can we help them? It's how can we open the door so that they can help themselves?
It's dangling the carrot. It's doing what you want to do, what we want to be in a position. We want to be in the position where we dangle the carrot, but in a way that we make awareness. We make it aware that it's an industry that's accessible to you and is open to you no matter what. And that's how I came through. And I can only speak from my personal experience, but giving them the opportunities. And it's hard for anybody to be able to break through as a successful presenter or actor. But you need to make sure that it's the accessibility and that every door is open for you along the way. And again, they've got to make the best of their own career, but everybody has. It doesn't mean you're not given life on a plate because you're disabled. That's not. You're not given life on a plate if you're black. You're not given life on a plate if you're gay or whatever. It's just being given the opportunities. And I do believe the opportunities are there.
It's just about squeamishness, I think. I think there's a sort of thing from commissioners, people casting this, that you sort of, I don't know, it's quite interesting, that package at the beginning where you were saying the wrong words and things like that. Actually, when I was at Channel 4, we would be absolutely fine about offending lots of people, but then suddenly might put on the kid gloves about disability, you said the wrong word, but you'd say cunt, you'd say anything else in shows like the 11 o'clock show, but then it would be, this is off limits. And I think actually that sketch was funny because it's sort of true, and actually the last leg is so good because it's not squeamish like that, and it treats disability just like another thing. I think this idea that there are these words you can't say, all of that is absolute bollocks in my book.
You can't say bollocks.
I can't say No, but I do think, I commissioned The In-Betweeners, and that was the biggest row about that was they say spastic, they say mong, they call people a bender, and it was, in the end, I think if something's funny, people will go with it. If it's if it comes from the right place, people will go with it. But it was a thing of these people are the heroes of the show. They use words that we shouldn't use, and it became a sort of right up to the head of the channel thing. Now, I don't think anybody would go, well, it's fine, it's funny, it's fine. But I think that there's a sort of kid glove thing with disability that's probably related to a general squeamishness, which is why people go, oh, well, I couldn't cast him because the public might not like it. And I was talking to Alison earlier about the brilliant trail for the Paralympics, and I think it was people from correct me if I'm wrong, but the British Paralympic Association that said you shouldn't show stumps and you shouldn't do this, and actually it was the sort of absolute ballsiness of that trail with that music, and actually, yeah, we're going to show a stump, we don't care, this is... that made the Channel 4 Paralympics, I think, a proper turning point, because it was something treated like everything else on Channel 4, rather than in a special, this is disability, we've got to be a bit careful.
I think advertising has got quite a big part to play in things as well. You know, if you're talking about a squeamishness or a kind of, you know, sort of worrying and probably overanalyzing things, and the audience are going to be completely relaxed. You know, they're just going to watch whatever, and if it's a good performance, they're not going to care. And if it's a good storyline that's about whatever the storyline actually happened to be about in the first place, then it's a, you know, it's a good thing. And you've got a young generation who's seeing presenters with disabilities on children's TV as well as on in the television their parents are watching. And I think the young generation just don't give a shit. You know, they just are watching it because of whatever it is. And you know, 20 years ago, everybody was worried if, you know, somebody was gay, you know, or whatever. And yeah, so I think that people will accept all of that. But advertising right now, I think, is a massive block to an awful lot of people, like across all sorts of things. And I know that a lot of people who are talking about getting increased access to employment opportunities for actors with disabilities, as I know advertising is a big, big thing for them, because it's just about portrayal in the mainstream. It's just, but then that's the same if you're a size 12, if you're a size 16. If
there are big gatekeepers in the BBC and Channel 4, and they can make a policy thing. In advertising, it's very piecemeal. You know, Guinness can do that, but there's not a sort of, you know, the BBC and Channel 4 owned by the public and commissioning loads of stuff have a position of influence that they could. I mean, I favour doing it with a nudge rather than a quota, but I think that would, you know, that would probably then have a knock-on effect to advertising and everything else.
Do you do a lot of self-tapes, Kurt?
Yeah.
So self-taping is a brilliant way as well of gaining the access, because when you were talking, maybe Steve, about mentioning about quotas for the casting room, that's actually kind of all, like, I'm doing a BBC two-parter just now, and I've got one day next week in London with the director and one day the following week. So I have to do like a whole drama in those 2 days plus a couple of days in Scotland, and that's just down to budget restrictions. It's down to how many flights they can afford for the director to go up and down, all of that stuff. So then me trying to pull that pool down is just awful. Like, I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to see the same actors that I know because I trust them because they're going to nail it. I want to open it up. So I've got like 80 self-tapes that will be coming in next week across 10 parts, and we'll watch all of those self-tapes, and then the ones that are right for the part, regardless of who they are, I'll send on to the producers and the director. So self-taping is a massive thing that I think makes the pool. It doesn't, geography has got nothing to do with it. Who your agent is has got nothing to do with it. It takes me 3 minutes to watch the self-tape that you've probably spent 2 days doing. And that's it. And you've instantly been considered for that part. And I think that's probably got quite a big part to play in the industry generally.
Yeah, it's a nice thing because you can do multiple takes, things like that, and you can get it out, and you get the instant access, 3 minutes instead of the minutes before that, the minutes after it, the goodbye, you get to narrow it down. I mean, I booked a new show I shot for HBO and Cinemax, a new pilot, and it's just been greenlit. So that was off as a self-tape. Then they brought me in for producers, and then they were like, yeah, okay, he's him. And that was it. But they had to see that up front, and they were like, okay. So I think self-taping is a big access point, too. But go back to the quotas for a second. The idea of me even presenting the quotas or even like wanting more access for people with disabilities is bad for me personally, because I get seen for able-bodied roles. I mean, I walk into commercials and every audition, I walk in. I do both, exactly. So what I'm saying is bad policy for me personally. So trust me when I'm like saying this, it's something that I think needs to happen, but is probably going to be detrimental to me. Yeah. So.
I just want to very quickly open it up to the floor. If anyone has any questions, I think you could probably just shout. Put your hand up first, otherwise it will be a mess. Yes.
Given that all broadcasters have had informal targets for disability diversity for years, and I'm not currently aware of any broadcaster having met the targets that they set. The BBC, for example, a flurry of announcements from the DG's office off the back of the BBC Trust saying they were gravely concerned about the state of disability, which is probably the sternest rebuke you'll get from the BBC Trust, with muted noises coming from ITV and Peter Fincham about diversity and his session yesterday, and Channel 4 missing their off-camera target for disability diversity across the Paralympics, even though it was a great piece of portrayal. How can we possibly trust any of you to deliver on what you're saying you'll now achieve?
Who wants to take that?
I think I best come back. Yeah, it's fair. No, I think it's very, very fair. Why, you know, it hasn't happened and it could have happened, so why should there be trust? I think that's absolutely fair. I do have to defend the muted noises from ITV. I think it's, you know, and without wishing to criticise, I might say it's easy to say we'll achieve 20%. It's easy to make a big statement. As I say, the mechanism to achieve that is much, much harder. So ITV and Peter Fincham specifically hasn't come out and said we will do this, because we're in a long consultation period with producers, with the people who are going to have to make the content. That's what he's talking about with the kind of social partnership. Is saying, okay, we all want to achieve something, and not like Kurt's saying, it can't be as simple as you do it, or we'll do this one thing. It's actually, okay, let's all get together and very sensibly, and through a period of months with a big YouGov consultation, a very serious consultation at the moment, say, okay, how actually are we going to achieve this? And when we know how we're going to achieve it, then we'll come out and say something. It won't be muted, it will be very, very purposeful. So, trust it, God, I think going back to the kind of point of your question in a way is how and why should you trust broadcasters? In a way, I've almost just got to say, trust is like faith, isn't it, in a way? It's very difficult to say, well, you can have it or you should. How do you define it? You either have it or you don't. I really hope, though, and do believe genuinely that it will be demonstrated and that actually hopefully will build trust. I agree at the moment, maybe there's no cause or reason for it because there's not enough evidence. Hopefully we'll provide the evidence through time, not too long a time, but that evidence will hopefully build trust. I think trust has to be built and earned, and that this process that we're now, you know, starting here and beyond, and it's already in process, will build that trust, I hope.
And just in terms of Channel 4, I mean, I said earlier in terms of that we were spending a lot of time thinking about our off-screen talent, so that we can bring it up sort of in terms of its impact to what we've achieved on screen. And we have made it a condition of awarding all our contracts around Rio that the producers that work with us will have to commit to that as well in terms of building up capacity of off-screen talent. And I think you will see that come. You will see evidence of that very quickly.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi. I just want to say two things. First of all, I'm incredibly lucky in that the part that I play Holly Griffin on New Tricks, which is on BBC One, where I work with limited interns. And I play his daughter in it, and the part that I play, my disability, luckily, has nothing to do with my character. She's just an 18-year-old girl, and she is going to university and has ambition and dreams that everyone else does. But it is the first of not very many. There hasn't been very many. And I've attended a few of these events, and you've all said, yeah, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. It never happens. It has happened for Paralympics, yeah, maybe, but that's sports, that's Channel 4. The other thing, disability and sex. There's been a lot about disability and sex from the male perspective. I mean, that film was amazing, but I was actually shortlisted to do that film. I couldn't do it because I was here. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot about disability and the disabled single woman in terms of like, I mean, New Tricks is written in. New Tricks wrote in a boyfriend for me. They consulted me about it. And they were like, yeah, we need to... They actually shot a sex scene with me and that person. But, like I said, yeah, so disability and single women, disability and sex, and yeah, just, yeah. But anyway, so, hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Going back to your sort of early point in that, yeah, what is to say that you're going to go away, all of you, and do something about this? That's why I think quotas are a good idea. Because if you set a quota and you have to try and fulfill it, right? Because if everyone just sits around and goes, well, you keep trying, but like nudging people to do it, they won't do it. They don't do it.
We did it. Well, I think I think also it's. I
But you
don't
said
mind
we
the
did
quote.
it. We're talking about the fact there's not enough. We accept there are not enough disabled actors, presenters on TV. We can accept that. So we need to do more, and we're trying to establish how best to go about that.
I think it's, people know how to get to a location if there's a roadmap built. And no one built a roadmap yet. I don't know if it's, taking everybody that's here and putting them on a pinwheel of the outside of the rim, and you need someone in the middle that's doing the hub work, that's saying, let me connect, let me show you how to do it, and bringing the entire process together and go, do you like how I roadmap this? And you go, it doesn't work for me because of, and then you work on it, but you don't want to take too much of your time because you're busy, right? You know what I mean? So it's like trying to figure out how to do that, saying, okay, can I get 15 minutes of your time once a week? Sure. Can I get 15 minutes of your time once a week? Sure. Okay, now this is what I think. I've done the research, I've done the homework, here's maybe the roadmap. How about this? And you go, it doesn't work because if we do that, the legal comes in. Okay, let me adjust it. And start building a roadmap instead of saying, I'll do something amorphously tomorrow.
Yeah. Alison, start doing a roadmap.
That's the right one. If we can get all the rest of the cast to come back, at the moment we're in negotiation, so might be they're all new.
Yeah.
Hi, Andrew. You like American actors?
We do. I think that's an interesting thing. Yes, I think we would. I don't write it, so there's two different things, isn't there? There's one where somebody has a disability and it's not part of their character and their storyline, and then there's another where it is. Either could happen. I think it would, I don't think me going to the writing team, this time you've got to have a disabled character, would be necessarily the right thing to do, but I could tell them to have a think about it, and then it'd be up to them. Almost if I told them not to do it, they'd probably do it, in my experience of dealing with writers and talent. Yeah. Yes, if it was in keeping with the show, rather than a sort of, and now here's the political broadcast in the middle. It's interesting, I have obviously liaised with I said lots of times about what was acceptable and not in lots of shows, and it's when there was a focus group done about disability by Channel 4, and there was a sort of away day about it. It was quite interesting. I commissioned a show called Banzai, which had sort of a screaming Japanese man and bets, and it was quite odd. And there were two clips in this reel, and we had to guess whether disabled people thought they were good or not. And one of them was two dwarfs climbing up a really tall guy and trying to stick a flag in his head. And one of them was a bloke who had one leg taking penalties against a blind goalkeeper. And I thought, oh, fuck, I'm going to get roasted here. But actually, the disabled people who'd seen it said, no, this is absolutely great. It's in keeping with the show. The show's mad. These clips are mad. It's, being included in the party. And then there was another thing which was nothing to do with me. I think it was a BBC News thing about a guy climbing Everest, and it was done in what was, I thought, quite patronising. This plucky disabled guy's disabled, and he's going to climb Everest. Isn't it wonderful? And that was seen as not really very good by the disabled people who'd been talked about it. So I think if there was a way for it being organic, funny, within the show, and not suddenly, oh, here's fresh meat, but now there's the message bit, then that would be fine. But that would have to come from the writers, probably more than me imposing it.
One more question. Sir?
First of all, I'd like to say I hope you enjoyed my orgasm. I'm available most days of the week, so feel free to... I'm quite new to the world of acting, and I've been quite fortunate to have met a lot of people who've given me opportunities and taken a chance on me. So I'm, in a good position right now. Prior to becoming an actor, I was actually a school teacher, and I've seen firsthand how having such a role in influencing children and coming into a classroom on a daily basis and having a teacher, you know, someone who's in a role of authority, it's normalised disability. And I think this is why I'm so passionate about doing what I'm doing, you know, acting now, because I can see how this can transpire on TV. I want, you know, for people to turn on the TV and not go, oh, who's that chick in a wheelchair? Just like, oh yeah, she's that funny one that's on that new drama series, etc. I think I've got confidence in my, you know, abilities, and I don't want to just be cast because I tick a little box. It's like, yeah, we got the disabled one, yeah, we got the black one, yeah, perfect. You know, I want to be cast because I'm a bloody good actress. However, I mean, I'm a savvy person. I've got self-belief and confidence. I'm aware that a lot of people might not be as fortunate as me, and the message that you are sending out is that if I go up for a role for a 25-year-old blonde secretary and I turn up to a casting and there are, you know, 6 other beautiful 6-foot-tall blonde, big-boobed actors out there, I probably wouldn't think I would never get it in a million years. I, for one, would still go for that audition, but I know that that would be quite off-putting for many disabled actors, because what we are showing, you know, on TV at the moment isn't reflecting that you would take me instead of, you know, a leggy blonde who is probably a similar standard to me acting, but looks aesthetically a lot better on screen. I think, if we're all honest, that has got a lot to do with it. We are still quite scared how this will go down, you know. Is she pretty enough because she has one arm? You know, should we just play it safe and go with the norm? And I think that's what we need to look at. Are we actually being honest with ourselves, going, are we still fearful of putting people with disabilities on TV because we're worried we're going to upset people, and, you know, everyone wants to watch TV for a form of escapism, and maybe they don't want to see someone in a wheelchair. I think, you know, we need to, even if there are small roles or reoccurring roles, we need to all make an effort to have more disabled actors, so that, you know, other actors will be like, okay, so I will definitely go for this role. You know, I'll go up for it because, hey, I saw that girl last week on TV and she did pretty well. I think this is what we really need to make an effort. So,
I would disagree a bit with you there, just because I mean, well, I certainly hate casting that way. I hate it when we get briefs when they're like, we want like just beautiful people. I mean, what does that even mean? I don't understand what that means. So if we ever get into dialogues with producers about that, or directors, we kind of try and really head that off at the pass, because I don't care if the person's been in a Calvin Klein campaign. Like, they better be better than the other 6 people in the waiting room, regardless of who those people are.
With you, but as an actor, I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah, no,
you know,
absolutely.
So for me, it's quite, you know,
and I would just love you to come in and nail it.
So it's all about communication, etc. So
yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't be put off by that. I mean, I think if you had that fear, you know, God, most actors in Britain would have a crippling fear of coming in. You know, even if you are a Calvin Klein model, you have a crippling fear of what you look like in the mirror. So I think, I certainly wouldn't let that people shouldn't be put off on that.
Also, this is the thing a bit about self-belief, isn't it? Doing an audition,
confidence,
sort of confidence. You've got to be prepared to do it and be rejected. I think it's harder if you're in a wheelchair, but in a way, I think if you're not in a wheelchair, then it's also quite hard, because there are 7 people up for the role and they might be going, I better they give it to the person in the wheelchair because that'll be more interesting. I don't know, I think that dealing with self-doubt and rejection is probably part of being an on-screen performer, whether or not you've got a disability, whether or not it's visible.
Can I ask something, just out of interest? I'm kind of almost reversing that. I can see how that, absolutely agree, by the way. I think it's fair enough, and how that can be intimidating and off-putting. How would you feel about arriving at an audition where you are one of 6 actresses with a disability? Would that be equally, presumably that, because I'm thinking, well, that's not a great thing either. I mean, if you want to be in that, and that's the way we'd like to see you, is in amongst...
I personally wouldn't let anything like that. I'd go for anything. Obviously, I've done what you've just seen on there, so pretty much up for that. But, you know, I do know a lot of people who would be deterred by, you know, because it's not represented. We're not seeing it on screen. So why should they have self-belief in that respect when they're like, well, I never see anyone on TV, or there's no, you know, major roles. So it would take a very strong person to be like, yes, I'm going to be the next, you know, big
But I think you have to be a very strong person if you want to make it as an actor.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the thing, is that it's, I don't know, not for the faint-hearted.
No,
It
yeah, I
does
mean,
make
out
an
of
effort
1,500 roles, I've booked 20.
Yeah.
You know, 1,500 auditions. Like, it's just that brutal. You know, I mean, there's...
It's a terrible job. But we do need more. So
What a perfect way to end it. Terrible job. Yeah.
but please come and audition.
Well, we've overrun massively, but it was a good discussion, so it was worth doing. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our panel. Give them a round of applause, only if you think they deserve it. Also, before you go, I need to thank Creative Skill Set for sponsoring the session. They actually have funding specifically to support disabled people trying to get into the TV industry. So speak to Joe and Ruth if you want more information about that. They are waving. One of them is. And enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you.